Maybe, I don't know, scrolling through your feed and just feeling this strange unease. Like the world around you, the rules you're supposed to live by, they aren't quite um, what they seem.
Oh, definitely. It's like there's this invisible current, isn't there, pulling you in directions you didn't consciously choose.
Exactly. And it's subtly shaping not just what you do, but what you believe, what you even think you know.
It's more than just a passing thought for many, I think. It's a profound, often unspoken sensation of, well, disease. We live in this era just overflowing with information, incredible global connection.
Right. Unprecedented connection.
Yet paradoxically, it often feels like an age of really profound alienation.
Hmm.
There's this pervasive yet almost invisible sense of control, a feeling that forces, beyond our immediate grasp, are influencing our perceptions and choices.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're going to explore today. We're pulling back the curtain on some really fascinating insights into these hidden architectures that shape our reality,
From the subtle societal control mechanisms guiding our daily lives.
to the very structures of our own minds that can, well, trap us or liberate us. Our deep dive today is all about unearthing this concept of the edge runner.
The edge runner.
Yeah. We want to understand how individuals can not just navigate, but truly understand and maybe even, I don't know, hack these complex systems,
Wow.
ultimately fostering genuine connection and profound self-realization in what feels like an increasingly perplexing world.
It's a tall order, but essential.
It really is. So get ready for an exploration that might just change how you see everything.
As I've been.
All right. Let's begin by considering a foundational, maybe slightly unsettling idea, these invisible architectures of society in mind. We're talking about structures so ingrained, so pervasive, that they often operate without us even realizing their influence.
And this is where we really need to delve into Michel Foucault's profound concept of the carceral body, or the social prison.
Right. The idea that society itself functions like a prison, but without obvious bars.
Precisely. He argued that modern society, far beyond literal bars and cells, functions as this sophisticated system of control. Think of Jeremy Bentham's Panopticon,
Ah, yes, the prison design.
that architectural marvel, or maybe horror, where a single central guard could observe all inmates without them ever knowing if they were truly being watched at that exact moment.
The uncertainty is the key, isn't it?
That's the genius or the horror of it. The belief in constant surveillance becomes the true mechanism of control. It leads to self-regulation. Inmates essentially become their own wardens.
So the power isn't just in the act of watching, but in the potential of being watched, which then shapes our behavior. And Foucault, he took this idea beyond just prisons, didn't he?
Absolutely. He compellingly showed how this hierarchical principle, this idea that allows the gaze to be directed unilaterally, isn't confined to penitentiaries. It's echoed in the very design of our schools, our hospitals, our workplaces.
Often built by the same architects using similar principles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
These institutions, which are ostensibly for our benefit, are also designed to keep, contain, and control docile bodies. You feel this as a subtle, pervasive sense of being evaluated, of your actions, maybe even your thoughts, being cataloged.
Whether by a boss, a teacher, or just the anonymous eye of the system.
Yeah, it's that unsettling CIA feeling, as some sources put it. You sense surveillance, but the observer remains invisible. Foucault called this a kind of slow death of the soul by degrees,
Wow.
a quiet suffering as we become these docile bodies, walking predetermined paths, our individuality subtly eroded.
So it's not just about explicit laws or physical confinement, but the very design of our spaces and our interactions. They shape how we move and behave in ways that promote conformity, discourage deviance. The architecture itself becomes a form of discipline.
It really does, even in seemingly benevolent institutions. And this extends far beyond physical spaces now, right into the digital realm, profoundly influencing the flow of information.
Ah, the modern panopticon.
You could say that. Modern control mechanisms, like social media platforms, operate as a kind of global-scale Skinner box.
A Skinner box. Explain that a bit.
Well, think about the likes, the shares, the retweets, those constant notifications, and especially the algorithmic feeds. These are all incredibly effective forms of what psychologists call variable ratio reinforcement schedules.
Like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. They offer unpredictable rewards, a like here, a comment there to keep you hooked, constantly checking, constantly engaging. It's not accidental. It's a meticulously engineered design for maximizing engagement and, by extension, control.
And what kind of information are these platforms optimized to feed us? You mentioned our selected information. It sounds like it's specifically chosen to keep us trapped in these attention loops rather than, genuinely informing us.
That's a really crucial distinction. Our selected information is typically fast, simple, highly emotionally charged, and very shareable. It prioritizes immediate engagement and rapid spread over, well, truth, nuance, or depth,
Think viral headlines, outrage baiting posts.
or just really simplified narratives. This creates powerful dopamine-driven addictive loops that are incredibly effective at shaping predictable patterns of belief and behavior on a mass scale.
And the long-term consequence.
Well, the long-term consequence is often what the biologist John B. Calhoun observed in his infamous mouse utopia experiment, a behavioral sink.
Right, the mice had everything they needed, but things fell apart.
Completely. Despite ample resources and no predators, the mouse populations experienced this profound degradation of complex social behaviors. It led to violence, withdrawal, a loss of reproductive drive, just chaos.
And how does that apply to us?
In a human context, this can be mirrored by an environment saturated with low-quality, R-selected information and these addictive feedback loops. It ultimately reduces individual agency and leads to a more passive and stultified state. We become less capable of complex, nuanced thought and more susceptible to simple, emotionally resonant messages.
This really helps us understand why scrolling through social media can feel so draining and why the news often seems so sensationalized. It's a system designed for a specific kind of engagement, often at the expense of your well-being or, frankly, your informed decision-making.
It actively works against deeper understanding. And by doing so, it subtly diminishes our capacity for complex social interaction and real agency. It's a sobering thought how easily we can get caught in these engineered loops.
Indeed. But it begs the question. If society is structured to exert such subtle control and is capable of creating this behavioral sink, do we all respond in the same way? Or do different individuals, maybe with different inherent strategies, navigate this Skinner box with vastly different outcomes, perhaps even exploiting its mechanisms?
That's a vital question. It brings us to the fascinating realm of human adaptation within these systems. Are we all just cogs in this machine, or do different people respond and navigate it differently, maybe even through what seem like contradictory strategies?
It can't be that we're all the same in response.
Absolutely not. We can find a powerful lens for understanding these differences by applying R and K-selected species theory. Now, this originally comes from environmental science.
Right, about different reproductive strategies in animals.
Exactly. But it can be applied carefully to human behavior. R-selected strategies tend to thrive in unpredictable high-mortality environments. Think of species that reproduce rapidly, mature early, invest little in individual offspring, like many insects.
High quantity, low investment.
Right. In human terms, this might manifest in unstable times as a focus on immediate gratification, opportunistic alliances, maybe a rapid turnover of relationships. Short-term thinking prevails.
And K-selects.
K-selected strategies, conversely, are favored in stable, resource-rich environments. These species invest heavily in fewer offspring, exhibit long-term planning, high parental investment, and develop complex social structures.
High quality, high investment.
Precisely. In human societies, this translates to an emphasis on long-term bonds, community building, strategic foresight. We see these play out in social structures, too. Some sources suggest male scarcity, in unstable times, might historically lead to polygamy as a way to ensure reproduction.
Makes sense from a purely strategic standpoint.
While male abundance in, say, overly comfortable societies might paradoxically contribute to trends of promiscuous sexual liberation as the perceived need for long-term pair bonding diminishes. Society stability, or lack thereof, can fundamentally push populations towards one strategy or the other.
That's a truly fascinating way to frame human behavior and social dynamics, how these environmental pressures can shape deep-seated strategies. But I'm curious, if for listeners trying to navigate these landscapes themselves, what happens when these traits from seemingly opposite ends of the spectrum mix in unexpected, maybe even unsettling ways within individuals? This brings us to a particularly intriguing and somewhat disturbing combination, doesn't it?
It does, and this is where the concept of the dark triad of personality traits, Machiavellianism, narcissism, and psychopathy becomes incredibly illuminating.
The dark triad. Often talked about, maybe not always fully understood in this context.
Well, it's described in our sources as a potent blend that paradoxically appropriates and distorts aspects of K-selected strategies, combining them with the immediate gratification and low empathy characteristics of R selection.
So it's not purely K, not purely R, but a kind of hybrid.
Exactly. Rather than operating purely as a K-type, who often values genuine social cohesion and long-term group benefit, or a pure R-type, focused on immediate, opportunistic reproduction, the dark triad individual crafts this hybrid, highly effective approach for ruthless personal gain. This isn't just bad behavior, it's a strategically optimized pattern of interacting with the world.
So these aren't just morally bad traits in isolation, but a strategic and highly effective combination for navigating complex social landscapes, often at others' expense. It's almost like a meta strategy for survival and dominance, leveraging the strengths of both R and K in a purely self-serving way.
Precisely. Individuals with dark triad traits are often masters at utilizing K-selected capacities, like strategic manipulation and dominance, but in a distorted, self-serving manner.
How so? Give us an example.
Okay, take the K-selected strength of long-term planning and strategic thinking. It's deployed not for community building, but for calculated, cold-blooded schemes to achieve significant personal gain. It's like an intricate chess game where other people are merely pawns to be moved or sacrificed,
Telling.
and they possess keen social navigation and interpersonal acuity. They use observational skills not for genuine empathy or in-group loyalty, but to identify vulnerabilities, charm potential victims, and skillfully manipulate social hierarchies.
They read the room, but for exploitation.
Right. And their willingness to confront challenges and dominate, coupled with a striking lack of empathy, translates into ruthless ambition and a relentless drive for power, instead of the typical K-type's more measured or perhaps conflict-averse approach. This aligns with this idea of the will to power, described as a mighty demon, a fundamental, almost instinctual drive in these individuals, often at the expense of love or genuine connection.
And resources. K-types are about careful resource management, right?
Yes, but here too it's distorted. They exhibit a relentless drive for resource acquisition and control, but it's a self-centered version of K-selected resource optimization. Resources are hoarded and leveraged for personal advantage, not shared for collective stability.
That's a disturbingly effective strategy. For listeners trying to navigate these landscapes themselves, how do we distinguish between someone employing, say, K-selected long-term planning for collective good versus a dark triad individual manipulating for self-gain? Is there a subtle tell, or is it genuinely that difficult to discern? It sounds like they can look very similar on the surface.
That's the critical question, isn't it? And it's often difficult precisely because the dark triad's appropriation of these K-selected traits makes their actions appear strategic, maybe even beneficial on the surface. The key often lies in discerning the motive and, critically, the impact over time.
So look at the outcomes.
Yes. A true K-type's long-term planning generally aims for group stability, mutual benefit, genuine loyalty, even if it requires short-term sacrifices from them or others. The dark triad individual's planning, however, will ultimately funnel resources, power, and attention back to themselves, regardless of the cost to others. They build shallow alliances of convenience, not deep bonds based on trust.
Any other tells?
Well, the tell often emerges over time. Observe if their actions consistently serve their own power and status, even when disguised as generosity or leadership. Does their charm feel superficial upon deeper inspection? Do they express a genuine capacity for remorse or empathy when confronted with harm they've caused? Often with dark triad traits, the answer is no.
Understanding this hybrid helps us recognize these patterns in society, why some individuals seem to navigate it so effectively, often at significant cost to others. It shows that complex interplay between predispositions and environment.
It's a stark reminder that not all strategies are about cooperation, and that our ability to discern true intent is paramount.
Definitely. Okay, so beyond these external societal systems and the different personality types navigating them, what about our internal struggles? How do they play into this engineered reality, perhaps tracking us in a cycle that's incredibly difficult to escape, almost perpetuating that behavioral sink from within?
Ah, yes. This brings us to a really significant internal challenge that can deepen the behavioral sink and profoundly inhibit individual agency: rumination.
Rumination, that endless loop of negative thoughts.
Exactly. It's a cycle of repetitive, negative, and often quite abstract thinking about problems, causes, consequences, without ever really moving towards solutions. And our sources indicate something striking. Rumination is especially high in ghettos or poverty-stricken areas. This isn't merely an individual failing. It points to a strong link to prolonged environmental stress, the challenging, often unpredictable conditions of such environments. It looks like a response to systemic pressure, not just, a personal choice.
That's a crucial distinction. Could this phenomenon, so prevalent in specific disadvantaged areas, be connected to the higher prevalence of our selected strategies we just discussed? It almost sounds like a systemic issue, perhaps related to biology rather than simply individual failing. It makes you wonder if society itself might be, in a way, cybernetically organized to perpetuate these conditions.
The connection is indeed complex, multifaceted, and really blurs the lines between nature and nurture. Prolonged stress, the kind often found in challenging, unpredictable environments that might favor our selected strategies, can indeed lead to profound epigenetic issues.
Epigenetics. Can you break that down simply?
Sure. Epigenetics involves changes in how genes are expressed, not changes to the DNA sequence itself. Think of it like a dimmer switch on a light bulb. The gene, the bulb, is still there, but epigenetics controls whether it's brightly lit, barely glowing, or off.
So it affects gene activity.
Right. Things like DNA methylation or histone modification. These epigenetic changes can act like a permanent stable blueprint for memories, and critically, they can even be passed down through generations.
Passed down.
Yes. This means a parent's trauma or prolonged stress could leave an epigenetic mark influencing their child's biology and predispositions. This could potentially contribute to widespread rumination and stagnation in specific populations, maybe for decades.
Oh, that's significant.
It suggests that while nature might give us certain predispositions, nurture through environmental stress, social conditioning can biologically embed certain tendencies. From this perspective, one could interpret the persistent struggles in certain communities not as inherent flaws in specific racial groups, for example, but as an unfortunate, perhaps even cybernetically organized, outcome of societal structures and environmental pressures that, over generations, have biologically entrenched these patterns.
It's a powerful nurture aspect
Absolutely.
influencing nature, shaping populations in ways that can be incredibly difficult to overcome. It reframes that whole nature versus nurture debate.
It certainly complicates it. And this ties back to why some people might perceive their struggles primarily through the lens of race or money. Those are the tangible manifestations of the systemic pressures that can lead to these biological embeddings over time.
That's a profound and somewhat alarming insight that external stressors can literally alter our biology and be passed down, creating these self-perpetuating cycles of vulnerability. What exactly does rumination do to us when we get caught in that internal loop? What are the effects?
Well, it's an emotional magnifier. It exacerbates and prolongs existing emotional states, sadness, anger, anxiety, depression. It's a relentless, self-reinforcing internal feedback loop.
Hard to break out of.
Extremely. And what's more, it's often highly resistant to traditional psychotherapy. It actually predicts poorer outcomes and depressive relapse
Yeah.
if it's not specifically targeted.
So standard therapy might not even work well if rumination is the core issue.
It might not be enough, yeah.
Yeah.
You could find yourself sliding back more easily. Rumination also leads to black and white thinking. The more we chew over something, the more polarized we become, often without integrating any new information or considering alternatives.
You got tunnel vision.
Pretty much. And crucially, it makes individuals less sensitive to contextual changes. It prevents them from adaptively responding to changes in the environment or benefiting from corrective learning that disconfirms negative beliefs.
So you miss opportunities to learn or change your view.
Exactly. This effectively creates self-fulfilling prophecies. For example, a person might abstract a specific problem, I didn't get that job, into a generalized negative self-identity, I am a loser, or the system is entirely rigged against me and always will be, rather than seeking concrete, actionable solutions or adapting to new opportunities. The core issue for the ruminator is often perceived to be out there, an unchangeable external reality, not in the internal process of rumination itself.
This really sheds light on how prolonged stress and a feeling of powerlessness, especially in communities facing systemic challenges, can create a cycle that's incredibly difficult to break. It helps explain persistent stagnation and why certain beliefs about one's circumstances can become so deeply ingrained, almost biologically. It shows how the external environment can literally change our internal wiring, making the path to agency feel, well, almost impossible sometimes.
It paints a challenging picture, definitely.
Okay, we've explored this intricate web of societal control, the various human adaptations, the internal traps of rumination, particularly how they can be etched into our very biology. Sounds like an incredibly challenging landscape. So, how do we break free? How do we truly engage with reality, especially when it feels like we're being pulled in so many directions by invisible forces? This is where the concept of the edge runner comes in, right? As
Yeah.
a kind of blueprint for a different way of being.
Exactly. Terence McKenna, in his unique way, proposed that running the edges is the way to get into reality.
Getting into reality, not escaping it.
Precisely. A deeper, more authentic engagement with existence than conventional life often offers. It's about pushing boundaries, exploring novel ideas, challenging received wisdom, and refusing to settle for prepackaged realities. It demands a level of conscious engagement and self-awareness that directly counters the passive absorption of engineered realities we've been talking about.
So, an edge runner isn't someone who rejects society entirely or isolates themselves from the world, because that sounds like it could easily lead to further alienation, or, as McKenna himself warned, maybe even a path to madness.
That's a really crucial clarification. While the danger of madness is real if one becomes too isolated, too incomprehensible to others, or loses their grounding, the true essence of edge running is primarily about developing profound adaptability.
Adaptability, like a generalist species.
Exactly like that. Think of generalist species in nature. They do very well when conditions change, they're more likely to adapt, and they survive a little bit longer during an extinction event compared to specialists. This flexibility, this capacity to thrive in rapidly changing conditions is critical in our evolving, uncertain modern world.
So, it's about being resilient and flexible.
Yes, and an edge runner, according to McKenna, maintains absolute impeccability of attitude and needs to be physically together, meaning grounded, integrated, capable of functioning effectively in the world, even as they explore radical ideas. It means staying connected and coherent, even as you push boundaries. You can't just float off into abstraction.
Right. And how does this strategy of edge running directly relate to countering the societal control we discussed earlier? The global scale Skinner box, the behavioral sink promoting that our selected information. It feels like a direct counterforce.
It absolutely is. Edge running directly counters engineered realities and societal control by cultivating critical thinking, radical self-awareness, and an active engagement with diverse perspectives. It's a deliberate path to resist the pull of the behavioral sink and those dopamine-driven addictive loops of our selected information.
So instead of simple, fast info.
It actively promotes case-selected thought, nuance, complexity, depth, the ability to hold contradictory ideas without needing immediate resolution. This involves moving beyond superficial engagement to genuine understanding and thoughtful consideration of long-term implications.
And it helps individuals escape that monstrous nothing.
Yes, what Kierkegaard called the monstrous nothing of the public. He described it as an abstract, unreal entity that promotes common mediocrity and drains inwardness. The edge runner reclaims their individuality, refusing to be an inauthentic part of the mass entity or just a generic consumer of information. It's about differentiating oneself from the collective psyche and fostering higher consciousness, which requires challenging the automatic, often unconscious responses ingrained by these systems.
So this isn't just some abstract philosophy. It sounds like a practical, vital survival strategy for navigating modern life. It enhances your capacity to understand and respond to the world around you, rather than just being passively shaped by it. It offers a way out of the societal traps by sharpening your inner perception and making you more resilient.
I think that's a great way to put it. And this idea of getting into reality, of deeply knowing oneself, especially in a world rife with engineered perceptions, resonates profoundly with another key concept, Carl Jung's process of individuation.
Individuation. Becoming whole, right?
Essentially, yes. For Jung, it's the ultimate goal of psychological development. It means becoming an individual. And as he put it, insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self. Moving beyond just roles or masks. Exactly. It's about moving beyond the mere social roles we play or the superficial meanings we construct, what Jung called the persona, our social mask, to unfold the original potential wholeness of one's personality, creating a new and more solid foundation for the total self. It's a journey towards psychological completeness, where you consciously differentiate yourself from the collective psyche, recognizing and integrating your unique essence.
So it's a journey to uncover our authentic self beneath all those layers of societal expectation and adopted identities. What are some of the key internal processes involved in this, profound journey? It sounds like it goes much deeper than just simple self-reflection.
Oh, it goes to the very core of our being. It fundamentally involves confronting and integrating unconscious contents, bringing them into conscious awareness. This includes the shadow.
The dark side we don't like to admit.
Well, yes, but not just the negative traits we'd rather not admit. It also includes undeveloped positive potentials, things we've repressed, perhaps because they didn't fit our self-image or weren't accepted by our environment. These are the parts of us we often deny, or even worse, project onto others.
We see our own disowned parts in them.
Precisely. It also involves engaging with the anima, the unconscious feminine side in men, and the animus, the unconscious masculine side in women. These archetypal figures are often unconsciously projected onto partners in our relationships, leading to misunderstandings or idealized, unrealistic expectations.
Ah, okay.
And beyond our personal memories and experiences, we also encounter archetypes, these inherited possibilities of human imagination, primordial images from the collective unconscious, universal patterns of experience and behavior that influence us at a deep, often unrecognized level. Things like the wise old man, the great mother, the hero.
These deep universal symbols.
Right. The goal of individuation is to bring these powerful, often conflicting forces, the shadow, the animus, the archetypes, into conscious dialogue with the ego, integrating them rather than being controlled by them unconsciously.
And what happens if we don't undertake this difficult work? If we don't confront and integrate these parts of ourselves, these unconscious contents, what are the dangers if we try to ignore them or let them run wild unchecked?
Well, if we fail to integrate these powerful contents, we risk what Jung called psychic inflation.
Inflation, like getting puffed up.
Exactly. Imagine someone who, maybe after a spiritual experience, suddenly believes they are a guru, uniquely enlightened, and starts dictating how everyone else should live. That's the ego identifying with a powerful archetype, perhaps the wise old man or the savior, and extending his personality beyond its individual limits.
A kind of grandiose delusion.
It's not just arrogance. It's a distorted, almost godlike sense of self, completely out of proportion with reality. And Jung warned this can destroy everything that was gained by previous efforts at self-awareness, replacing genuine growth with this inflated state. It's like discovering a powerful new tool, but then letting the tool control you, rather than the other way around.
That sounds dangerous, personally and socially.
It can be. It can lead to self-destruction, but also to projecting one's undeveloped shadow onto others, creating conflict and misunderstanding in relationships. It can also manifest as neurosis. Jung saw neurosis not just as mental illness, but as self-division, an unsuccessful attempt on the part of the individual to solve the general problem in his own person.
So neurosis is a sign of inner conflict, of unintegrated parts.
In this view, yes. It's often intimately bound up with the problems of our time, stemming from the conscious mind trying to cling to a narrow ideal while neglecting other vital, perhaps contradictory aspects of our nature. Individuation is about resolving these inner conflicts, uniting psychological opposites to achieve a new equilibrium. This allows life to flow forward, avoiding stagnation, congestion, and ossification. Ultimately, it leads toward higher consciousness and psychological wholeness, allowing for the full flowering not only of the single individual, but of the group.
This offers a really profound framework for deep personal growth. It's about moving beyond just reacting to external pressures to actively shaping your internal landscape, becoming more complete, more resilient, taking ownership of your entire psychological being, light and shadow, and achieving a deeper sense of self that's hopefully less susceptible to external manipulation.
That's the goal, yes. A challenging but rewarding path.
Definitely. Now, this journey of individuation, of engaging with reality as an edge runner, it sounds like it demands a profoundly clear understanding of what's actually true. But how can we be sure of what we know, or maybe more importantly, what we think we know, especially about others and the knowledge they possess? It feels like our minds are constantly playing tricks on us, leading us astray.
They absolutely are, much more often than we like to admit. A huge part of this journey involves recognizing the inherent biases and limitations in our own perception and thinking. We all tend to operate on what psychologists call naive realism.
Naive realism.
It's the deeply ingrained belief that the world is precisely as we see it, that our perceptions are objective, factual representations of reality. But, simple visual illusions powerfully demonstrate that our direct perception can be easily fooled. What you see isn't always what's there.
Our brain fills in the gaps or gets tricked.
Right, and our minds are also highly prone to patternicity, or apophenia. This is the evolutionary tendency to perceive patterns in the world as an adaptive feature, even in genuinely unrelated or meaningless stimuli.
Seeing faces in clouds.
Exactly, that's pareidolia. Seeing faces or recognizable images in random patterns, the face on Mars, a nun bun in a pastry. Or it can be detecting meaningful connections among events that are just coincidences, like thinking of a friend and then they call.
Which feels meaningful, but is probably just chance.
Often, yes. It makes you wonder how many times in our own lives we've connected two completely unrelated events simply because our brains wanted to see a pattern. It's a testament to how eager our minds are to find meaning, even when there isn't any inherent connection. And this powerfully contributes to beliefs in paranormal phenomena or complex conspiracy theories. It's an adaptive mechanism that, without critical scrutiny, can lead us profoundly astray.
So we're almost hardwired to see things that aren't really there or make connections that don't actually exist. As a kind of survival mechanism that can easily backfire in today's complex information environment, that's a powerful insight into how easily we can construct false realities for ourselves.
To a significant extent, yes. It was likely adaptive to quickly find meaning, spot potential threats, connect the dots. But in a modern context, overloaded with information, it can be detrimental. We also fall prey to confirmation bias.
Seeking out what we already believe.
Right, we actively seek out and interpret information that confirms our existing beliefs, often ignoring or dismissing contradictory evidence. And perhaps even more subtly, there's the bias blind spot.
What's that?
That's where we readily detect bias in others. Oh, they're biased because of X, Y, Z. But we're often slow to detect those same intellectual deficits in ourselves. It leads to this holier-than-thou attitude, especially in political or social discourse, where each side sees only the other as biased.
We see the speck in their eye, but miss the log in our own.
A classic human failing. Terence McKenna even described a balkanization of epistemology and public discourse, where due respect is demanded for views that, frankly, don't make sense to any rational inquiry. This severely weakens critical thinking and the collective search for truth, making genuine dialogue and progress incredibly difficult.
This sounds like it could lead to a lot of incorrect assumptions. Facing our own darkness helps us understand others.
Yes, by acknowledging the injustice and violence we inflict upon our own natures, when we project our unconscious contents onto others. This difficult process allows us to understand and love their fellow man better by seeing beyond our own subjective filters. It helps us recognize that others' perspectives, even if they seem to us to be focused purely on race or money, are formed by their own unique interplay of experience, environment, maybe epigenetic inheritance, systemic pressures, and the social narratives they encounter.
So their perspective isn't just incorrect.
It's not simply incorrect, it's a valid expression of their co-created reality. Without this critical self-awareness on our part, we risk becoming trapped in our own illusions, unable to truly connect, empathize, or even accurately assess the systemic forces at play that might perpetuate conditions like rumination and stagnation for specific groups. We just end up judging from our own biased viewpoint.
This is so critical for fostering more accurate self-knowledge, improving our understanding of others, and avoiding the pitfalls of rigid thinking and uncritical acceptance in such a complex information environment. It really urges you, the listener, to question not just the information you receive, but how you are processing it and how your own ingrained biases might be shaping your reality and your judgments of others.
It's an ongoing practice, not a one-time fix.
Definitely. Okay, we've explored the invisible architectures of society, the intricate psychology of human adaptation, the treacherous terrain of our own perceptions, highlighting how easily we can be influenced or trapped. It can feel overwhelming, like the system is too big to beat, or that our circumstances, maybe shaped by generations of stress, are immutable. So, given all these insights, what's a tangible, actionable way to begin shifting our reality and reclaiming agency, moving from passive absorption to active participation, especially when dealing with seemingly intractable problems like those in disadvantaged communities? Is there a way to actually beat the societal control?
Well, one surprisingly powerful yet profoundly simple method discussed in the sources is spontaneous, irresponsible kindness.
Irresponsible kindness. What does that mean?
It means acts that are inherently unpredictable, unquantifiable, and defy the microphysics of power and surveillance that characterize modern control mechanisms. They are a direct counter to the hyper-ordered, controlled, and predictable reality we've been discussing. They're like a glitch in the matrix of control.
So they disrupt the system just by happening, precisely because they can't be planned for, monetized, or predicted by algorithms. They're almost like these unexpected acts of defiance that subvert the very logic of control.
Exactly that. They cannot be easily absorbed into an economic model or a marketplace of ideas because their very essence is being out of nowhere, non-transactional, and utterly unexpected. They are not designed by the exploitation algorithm that seeks to predict, package, and monetize every interaction.
So the system can't easily account for them.
Right. And thus, they cannot be effectively manipulated or suppressed by it. This amplifies societal variety, which thinkers like Stafford Beer emphasized as crucial for system resilience through variety engineering. By injecting unpredictability and genuine human connection, these acts introduce noise into the control system, making it less efficient at predicting and guiding behavior. They break the mold.
That's a really profound idea that simple, spontaneous acts can be a form of genuine system disruption. But how do these acts impact us personally and society at large? How can something so simple create such a profound shift, especially for those maybe caught in cycles of rumination or systemic disadvantage?
Well, they offer meaningful options and agency to both the giver and receiver. They directly counter that passive and stultified state often found in the behavioral sink. Consider this thought experiment from the sources. If every adult in the USA were to spontaneously say, Cash App just one other person on dollar. Just a dollar from every adult to one person. That's potentially over $100 million in immediate, largely untraceable, non-commercialized transfers of wealth or resource.
Wow, yeah.
It highlights how collective, seemingly small individual actions can unlock immense collective resources and mobility. It fundamentally challenges a scarcity mindset. It shifts perception from what I lack to what we collectively possess and can share.
It bypasses the usual channels.
Completely. Such acts also uncouple knowledge and power because they operate beyond the control of established communicative and economic structures, beyond traditional authority figures. They bypass the kind of eminence-based practice that often dictates who gets to speak and for how long, allowing new forms of social capital and connection to emerge from the ground up.
It sounds like it could literally alter how we perceive our abilities and mobility in society. It gives us a new sense of collective power and potential. It feels like a genuine way to beat the societal control we talked about, not through some grand revolution, but through an almost viral form of generosity.
It absolutely can. These acts revitalize true human connection. They counter the breakdown of connection in modern society where people become stranger among strangers. They foster a sense of belonging together that transcends artificial barriers of creed, party, nation, or state. They push against the amorphous mass and the mass degeneration of the personality that Kierkegaard warned about.
So it injects something different into the system.
Essentially, yes.
Uh,
They inject a powerful dose of case-selected thought, high-quality, complex, empathy-driven interaction, maybe even long-term community investment, directly into the behavioral sink. This could potentially reverse the degradation of complex social behaviors and restore a sense of genuine human connection.
And the idea is that these acts, especially to literal strangers or those in true need, giving them a taste of something different, could that actually shift perspectives? Maybe even nudge someone from an R-type strategy towards a K-type one?
The sources suggest exactly that. Such acts of irresponsible kindness can offer a taste or a chance for a different perspective. By demonstrating the power and benefit of cooperation, trust, and maybe even long-term investment in community, it could potentially disrupt ingrained patterns. It might offer a pathway, however small, toward more case-selected behaviors. It's a direct, unmediated affirmation of individual human worth and a powerful counter-narrative to systems often designed for division and disempowerment.
That's incredibly hopeful, actually, that something so simple could have such leverage. Okay, so we've touched on the nature versus nurture debate and epigenetics, especially concerning rumination and how environmental stress can literally change our biology over generations. This raises a crucial question then. What does all this mean for the idea of deeply ingrained types, like R and K selected individuals, or for those who feel stuck in generational cycles of disadvantage? Can a person truly change their fundamental psychological orientation, or are we essentially stuck with our predispositions and circumstances, as many in, say, downtrodden communities might understandably believe?
Well, the sources strongly suggest a significant fluidity, challenging those deterministic views of both nature and nurture. The concept of the observer shaping reality comes up again.
Our perception influences reality.
Yeah, how our individual beliefs, memories, our entire life's experience, the accumulated pattern of our information ways, plays an active role in shaping what we perceive. This isn't just internal chatter. It profoundly influences our external world. This extends to some really profound ideas, like consciousness persisting after death, and our perceived reality, even in intense states like DMT experiences or near-death experiences, being a co-creation.
A co-creation?
Yeah, personalized reality dynamically generated uniquely shaped by our internal landscape. There isn't necessarily a single fixed heaven or hell blueprint in these states, according to these perspectives. It's profoundly individual, shaped by us.
So our internal state isn't just passively receiving reality, it's actively shaping it and potentially even influencing our fundamental type or our life path over time. It tells us that our beliefs are far more powerful than we often assume.
Yes, exactly. What we believe about ourselves, what we vividly imagine, isn't just internal chatter. It's actively shaping our interaction with the superfluid, as one source poetically puts it, and therefore shaping the reality we experience. This profound interplay between inner and outer is continuous.
And how does this connect back to nurture and epigenetics?
Well, while nature might give us certain predispositions via genetics, nurture through environmental stress, social conditioning like that are selected information, but also through these powerful acts of kindness, can profoundly influence our biology and potentially their behavior or predispositions via epigenetics. The trauma of a parent can leave epigenetic marks influencing a child's biology. This indicates that while we have predispositions, our environment and experiences are constantly interacting with and shaping them.
So it's not just about inherited traits fixed at birth, but how the environment constantly interacts with them, and crucially, how we perceive and interact with that environment. This truly seems to dispel the view that our circumstances are unchangeable, or that we are merely products of an unalterable system.
Absolutely. This dynamic interplay means that the view that societal structures are entirely deliberate, unchanging, and impossible to influence, while completely understandable given the systemic pressures people face, is not the whole picture. The sources suggest, as we discussed, that random acts of kindness, if you do it right, could even potentially change an R-type to a K-type by offering that taste, that chance to switch perspective.
It's not a magic bullet, but a potential disruptor.
Exactly. It's not a quick fix, but a potent intervention that can disrupt ingrained patterns, maybe even on a biological level via epigenetic shifts over time, and offer new pathways for development. It dispels the view that we are merely products of an unchangeable nature or an entirely deliberate, unchanging system. It highlights the dynamic, co-created nature of our experience.
So even people who have been categorized or who categorize themselves as, say, lower end of the societal scale or downtrodden, and who may attribute their struggles primarily to race or money, they're operating within a dynamic reality where agency and change are possible.
That's what this perspective suggests. Their beliefs, while valid expressions of their lived experience shaped by very real systemic pressures and maybe even epigenetic inheritance, are not necessarily immutable facts of an unchangeable system. They are part of this co-created reality. Our discussion reveals mechanisms like epigenetic inheritance and societal control that contribute to these circumstances, but it also reveals paths to navigate and potentially change them, providing a counter-narrative to a purely deterministic worldview.
This reframes nature versus nurture as this ongoing dynamic interplay. It suggests that personal transformation and societal change are always possible through conscious engagement with both our internal world, our beliefs, our perceptions, and our external actions, like these acts of kindness. It tells us that we have more agency than we might realize in shaping our own being and the world around us.
It puts the power and the responsibility back into our hands to some extent.
Okay. We've explored such powerful ideas today: societal control, biological predispositions, the potential for individual transformation through individuation and acts of kindness. But how do we engage with this profound knowledge without falling into the trap of simply becoming another cog in a different, perhaps more enlightened system? Or worse, being dismissed as just another wacko with a fringe theory? How do we differentiate this message, these complex truths, from other, maybe less grounded ideas that might lead people astray? How do we avoid becoming part of the problem we're trying to understand?
That is a really critical question. It requires constant vigilance and profound reflection to discover what is truly individual in ourselves. Kierkegaard, again, warned against the public as that monstrous nothing, made up of unreal individuals who lose their individuality in the mass entity and become inauthentic.
So the goal is authenticity, differentiation.
Yes, strict differentiation from the collective psyche, developing one's unique personality rather than letting collective functioning take the place of individual differentiation. This means not just accepting a new ideology, even one that seems enlightened, but embodying your unique truth and resisting the pull of any mass movement that demands conformity.
So it's about staying true to one's unique path. even if that feels isolating sometimes. And not just swapping one set of accepted beliefs for another, even if the new ones seem more correct or aware. It's about maintaining your genuine self in the face of all systems.
It is. And that comes with a critical warning, which we touched on earlier. The danger is madness when running the edges if one isolates themselves excessively or fails to make their insights comprehensible to others.
Right, McKenna's warning.
He emphasized absolute impeccability of attitude and the importance of being physically together, meaning psychologically integrated, socially connected, grounded to anchor these explorations. This avoids the pitfalls of isolation and self-deception that can occur when one becomes, as he put it, islanded in a situation where nobody can make sense out of what you're saying. The message isn't just for you. It needs to be connectable, somehow, to a broader reality, something that can resonate and be understood, even if it challenges norms.
That's a crucial point. How then do we differentiate this message, these complex truths about systems, biology, consciousness, from other, perhaps less grounded ideas that might be easily dismissed as unscientific or just wacko? How do we communicate them without losing credibility or adding to the noise?
Well, I think it involves recognizing the fragileness of knowing, as one source terms it. We must understand that there are no Platonic archetypes
Yeah.
in the sense of absolute, unchanging truth that guarantees certainty. We're not finding the final answer.
So avoid dogma.
Absolutely. Instead of seeking definitive answers, we should build models, and to call them that. Always be ready to throw the model out if it doesn't encompass new dimensions or proves insufficient, rather than clinging to rigid ideologies or demanding false closure. McKenna critiqued this balkanization of epistemology and the social virus of political correctness that sometimes makes it uncool to point out even to yourself that somebody else doesn't make sense.
We need rigorous thinking, but also humility.
Exactly. This provisional, ever-changing relationship to the world, grounded in critical thinking and continuous questioning assumptions, is essential to avoid becoming dogmatic, which is just as restrictive as any form of uncritical belief. This path, as you might say, is sharp as the edge of a razor, and perhaps very few are capable of this, treading it only from inner necessity. It's about genuine intellectual humility, not certainty, and constantly refining your understanding in the face of new information. It's about embodying the edge runner's spirit not just in what you learn, but in how you hold that knowledge.
That outlines a really conscious, ethical approach to engaging with these complex truths. It emphasizes personal responsibility, genuine intellectual humility, and a commitment to continuous growth over simplistic answers or dogmatism. It encourages you, the listener, to live your insights, not just believe them, and to always remain open to new information, even when it challenges your existing models. It's about becoming a truly unique, self-aware individual in a world that often wants to just slot you into a predefined category.
A lifelong endeavor, really.
Indeed. We've truly navigated a deep dive today. We've uncovered the invisible architectures of societal control, explored the intricate dynamics of human behavior from R&K strategies to the dark triad's chilling synthesis, confronted the silent epidemic of rumination, and charted a course towards Jungian individuation.
We've seen how spontaneous acts of kindness can be a radical micro-rebellion, disrupting control systems in unpredictable ways, and how our very perception of reality is this dynamic, co-created dance between nature and nurture, challenging even deeply ingrained beliefs about our potential and limitations.
We've learned that true liberation isn't about escaping reality, but about entering it more authentically, differentiating ourselves from the collective psyche, and constantly challenging the biases that obscure our understanding.
The path of the edge runner is one of profound self-discovery and conscious engagement. It promises not just survival, but perhaps a richer, more meaningful existence without falling into those traps of rigid thinking or uncritical acceptance. It's really a call to profound personal agency.
The journey of becoming truly individual, of running the edges of what's known and what's possible, it's not easy. It demands vigilance, adaptability, humility, as you said, but it promises a deeper, more authentic engagement with reality, where you are an active co-creator, not just a passive participant.
And so, perhaps we can leave you with this thought, drawing from the depths of our discussion today. Considering how our internal beliefs can actively shape our perceived reality, and how our environment and actions can profoundly influence our very biology through things like epigenetics. What hidden assumptions might you be holding right now that are limiting your perception of what's possible, not just for yourself, but maybe for the collective?
And building on that, what small, unpredictable act, maybe even an act of irresponsible kindness, could you initiate to test the edges of that perceived reality? To introduce a little positive disruption and perhaps unlock a new path for us all, proving that change is always possible, even in what seems like an unchangeable system.
Something to ponder.